Hey, how we doing, guys? Dan Hunt with Meraki Performance, back with another episode of the Heads or Tails show here. Like always, we're excited to be back. We're in the midst of summer, and this isn't a collaboration. This is a collaboration with CatchMark SportsNet, and we are super excited to be bringing you just information and content and resources and strategies and learning from our experience and really training not only the individual, the head side of the coin, the mindset, but also the flip side of for leaders and coaches and even business owners. How do you develop the tails side of the coin, which is the collective mentality of a team, of an organization? And the thing is that those two things both need to be cultivated. We cannot ignore the individual, obviously, but we also need to recognize that it's the alignment of everybody together in common attitudes, shared beliefs, and behaviors as it relates to the collective mentality. And so that's what we dive into here. We're trying to equip individuals, we're trying to equip leaders, and we're just trying to be a resource for you where when you're experiencing things or you're looking for ways to increase your capacity and capability, even your certainty or to some degree, your character and identity around who you are, your mindset, and what you're trying to achieve, that you have something in your backyard that you can connect with and be able to continue to move forward. So that's what we're here to do. We're here to equip you. We want to see you with Meraki Performance. We believe that greatness is within everybody. And it's when we focus on specific things and we end up taking action on those specific things that we move closer to living that out. And that is our entire purpose, is to help you live out, not only to recognize, but then to live out the greatness that's within you. And so on the last episode, we really dove into what we called the performance cycle, right? We talked about the different aspects of the performance cycle. We talked about how there's the struggle phase initially with the performance cycle. Then there's the release to kind of slip in or step into the flow state or being in the zone, which if you're an athlete, you've experienced that before. You know, when you have a clear goal and you're experiencing or receiving immediate feedback where you are just challenged, but where your skills just above that challenge you're facing, and you lose track of time, that you are in the zone, right? And that's the place that most athletes strive to be. In terms of the corporate athlete, we want to be there as it relates to running meetings, as it relates to doing specific work or maybe creating specific things, problem solvings and strategy. Like, we want to be able to get into that space. And then on the flip side, there needs to be a recovery. And in the last episode, we talked a lot about avoiding the two extremes, especially when it comes to the summertime, whether you're an athlete or I've seen this in the corporate world, just adults in general. It seems like when we enter into the summer, all of our routines go out the window. Everything flies out, or we go on that one vacation and we don't end up getting back into the routine, and we end up missing out on a lot of time of really impactful work. And so we talked about avoiding the extremes, avoiding the go, 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 and not finding recovery, because that leads to depleting our resources, our most valuable resource of our cognitive energy, or being able to give specific time and attention to things. But then it also depletes just our general energy level. And we don't want to do that. But the flip side of it is that we want to completely avoid just the stopping. We want to avoid just doing nothing. And I see that a lot where it's like, especially with athletes within high school spaces and even college, you finally get that break and it's like, I don't want to do anything. But the thing is that if you don't do anything, you end up taking even more steps back, and then you're almost restarting and needing to build momentum moving forward. And so we're going to talk a little bit today really about the struggle phase. And I want to dive in specifically with that and talk about one of the major reasons why I believe people don't just struggle for moments or don't just struggle maybe for a day, but that struggle really extends into long periods of time. And the thing I would say is that we take what could be a struggle of maybe walking through a dry field, all right? So if you picture a dry field of 250 yards, 300 yards wide, we take that dry field where we don't want to be there. Like, there's nothing good there. It's hot. right? We don't, it stinks, right? We take that dry field, and because we don't do these specific things, we end up creating or stepping into more of a desert. And we're walking through this desert and we're trying to figure out, how do we get out of this thing? How do we move through this? How do we get to that release and back into our best performance, or the release and back into that season of life where I'm very focused, I'm driven, I'm able to execute on the things that I want to execute on, and my focus is in tune. And the biggest major reason that I see people extend through that field into more of a desert, and they stay in that desert, is because there's a lack of clarity. And this is a common theme that we've talked about as it relates to our greatest performance, as it relates to us really maximizing ourselves in reaching that peak performance, is that if we want to have that, and we want to have that more consistently, not only just in life in general, but also within specific pursuits, there has to be clarity. We have to have specific things that we're anchored into, directions that we're going, actions that we can take, even reasons why we're doing it, identifying our internal inspiration, or maybe even team motivation of why we're doing that. We need to have clarity, okay? And when we do not have clarity, what happens is that we start relying on so many inputs and so much of the world around us that really ends up dictating what actions we're taking, what steps we're taking, that we end up being a boat out in the middle of the ocean with no rudder, no motor, and the waves are crashing. We're just tossing back and forth. Do you feel that way? Have you ever felt that way? You ever felt like, I just don't know which direction's north, which direction's south? I don't know whether I'm moving forward or moving backwards. I just feel like I'm getting tossed everywhere. And I would imagine if you are thinking of a time, or maybe you're in that season right now, you probably don't have a lot of clarity. You probably don't have specific things that you're anchored into. And so that lack of clarity is a huge piece. And a thing that we can do is create clarity. The other piece that I want you to zoom in on right now, or lock into, is that mood follows action. That's another principle. So our performance needs clarity, but also mood follows action. And a lot of times when we're in that struggle and we don't have a lot of clarity, our mood shifts. We go from a hopeful place, a hopeful perspective. We go from a lot of energy, a lot of momentum moving forward, a lot of belief, even self-belief, belief within our team, excitement, right? All these things that all of a sudden we don't have certainty anymore. We don't believe that the things we're doing are going to really lead us to where we want to go, right? We end up just really, our whole mood ends up becoming just down and pessimistic and grim, and believing that we're going to be stuck here forever, all right? And the reason why I want to highlight this is because this is really where I want to go today, is that mood follows action. And there's a couple aspects with this. The first thing I'll say is that if you ever want to shift your mindset, right? If you ever want to shift, if you've been that person, or you've thought to yourself, like, I just got to shift my perspective, I want you to understand this thing. Without physically shifting your state, right? Physically shifting your physiology within your body, right? Essentially moving. Without moving, you cannot really effectively shift your perspective. You struggle to shift your actual focus. Your mind struggles to look towards other things, all right? And that's one of the reasons why we talk a lot with athletes about, when you are frustrated, you're overwhelmed, the first thing you need to do, we say step back. And essentially what we're saying is, it's a cue to say, let's shift our state. Let's move, let's bounce, let's rock back and forth, let's lean forward, let's lean back, let's move our hands, let's do something to shift our body, so then our mind can shift somewhere else, okay? Because without that physiological shift within our body, we continue to focus on the thing that we're either most fearful of, most frustrated with, right? Most angry at. We continue to focus on that thing because that's our biggest problem. And if we keep focusing on that and making that problem from maybe a molehill into a mountain, and it continues to get bigger, it gets so big we don't think we can move through that. And so we got to shift. We got to step back and move around. And when we do that, we're able to shift our perspective and maybe come at this a different way, all right? And so I'm sharing that because I have these disciplines, right? I call them Meraki disciplines, but these are disciplines that I've instilled in my life specifically for not only cultivating certain aspects of who I am, but I've also like trouble. I don't like I've safeguarded to some degree, maybe not completely, but I've safeguarded to some degree being able to move through struggle quicker. All right. And I share this with you. And obviously I'm no longer an athlete, right? I mean, I work out, I do things, but I'm no longer competing. I would say I've shifted in my life now more to the corporate athlete, right? I'm running a small business. I'm working on building that business. I'm working on really cultivating the relationships with my wife and my kid and, my kids, multiple kids, and people that I value deeply, right? I'm seeking to continue to step into what I believe my greatness is, right? And there's struggles that come with that, right? Just like there's struggles within an athletic pursuit, a business pursuit, a relationship pursuit, just life in general. There's struggles that come into that. And I've gone through a season recently where there's been a lot of struggles. There's been a lot of like trying to get really strategic and zoom in my focus on specific things. There's been a lot of just problem solving, you know. To be quite honest with you, there was even a specific situation and problem that like there was a cancer scare, right? I don't know if you can see here, but there's been a mark that's been growing on my face for many, many years now. And I had to get a piece of that cut out and I had to wait 2 weeks to find out that it's not, but that was in the back of my mind taking up space, right? There's been a struggle. There's been a lot of cognitive energy and I would say maybe not wheels spinning, but there's been a lot of friction, right? And the thing is that's not necessarily a bad thing because in this season of struggle, one thing I want you to take away from this is that it can be a catalyst, a crucible to increase your capability of skills and things that you need to achieve what you want in the future, but also your capacity to endure the stress and the challenges to get to where you want to go. And I know that's what is happening in my life right now. And so I talk about the mood follows action because it's very easy in these seasons of struggle to just want to say, forget this, man. This is tough. I'm tired. Like, I don't know what the next step is. I don't know what the next thing I need to execute on. Like, the thing I thought was closer, it just seems more far away. It's very easy to get into those spaces, especially with our mind and our perspective. And the thing is that you need to keep moving and you need to keep developing and you need to keep taking action. And so I developed these disciplines because as it relates to us being, I would say, the greatest version of ourselves, right? Stepping into that potential or being the best version of who we can be, we really need to cultivate, four spaces. And the first is our physical, like our physical, who we are, our body. We need to continue to develop that. We need to continue to develop our mind. We need to continue to sharpen that and to learn new skills and to be able to refine that mental and establish that mindset and strengthen that. We need to be able to navigate the emotions that happen within life and that we experience. We need to be able to identify emotions that are destructive and deductive. And we need to also identify the emotions that are enhancing and keep fueling those, right? And then there's this spiritual aspect that we need to continue to connect with ourselves, connect with others, this sense of gratitude, but it's also really developing this sense of certainty of the future as well. That's a spiritual aspect. And so I've come up with these disciplines that I'm going to share with you because these are things you can do every single day, no matter what, to continue, even in the struggle, to continue to move forward and cultivate your physical, your mental, your emotional, and your spiritual capability and capacity to continue to move forward, okay? And one of the things I say immediately is like, you need to set the tone for the day right away. And so the way that I always try to set the tone is I'm drinking 16 ounces of cold water as soon as I wake up, and I'm doing everything I can to express gratitude for either 3 people or 3 things within my life, all right? And the glass of water is actually a thing that I've begun to do is a little bit of pink Himalayan salt and lemon. And what I've found is that helps me hydrate right away in the morning, and then it helps wake me up immediately too. And then the gratitude piece is like, it begins to focus me in on the things that I want to focus on. I want to focus on the good things in my life. I want to focus on the good people in my life. That helps me move forward. That helps shift my perspective from all the problems to the things that I find great in life. All right. And so that's one of the things that I do daily. All right. And what I've found is that one of the reasons why I struggle the most is I'm not great at giving gratitude. I'm not good at it. I'm not good at waking up every single day. There's more days than not I don't wake up and give gratitude. I don't wake up and I don't say I'm grateful for these things, right? And I do find that the more consistently I do that, especially in struggling times, the quicker that I can move through it. I can tell you recently the struggles that I've experienced in life, a lot of it has been due to I'm not great, like I'm not expressing gratitude. I'm not giving thanks or appreciating the things around me. I'm extremely blessed to have the life that I do and the people that I do in my life, to be doing what I do. And I need to do a better job of looking towards that. And maybe that's something you can adopt as well. The other piece is that I reflect and I evaluate. And I do this almost every single day. Every day I wake up and I try to already have 2 to 3 things that I'm going to do that day that are connected to what I value and actually the purpose or mission I have on my life. Actions that are going to directly align with that. And so I immediately, after I go through that first initial piece, I immediately go, okay, what are those things I'm going to do for the day? And then at the end of the day, I give myself an after action review. And so I say, what did I do well? What did I not do well? And what I need to do better next time, especially as it relates to those 2 or 3 actions that I had for the day. All right. The other piece of that is that I actually journal. And what I find is that this helps a lot for me, at least processing things through and being able to write them down and pause and then even read it back to myself. This is something that also further cultivates like my not only my focus on the tasks that I have, but for journaling, it helps me cultivate this spiritual capacity for myself and connecting with myself, right? And some of it's emotions too, okay? Because I'm identifying as I'm writing emotions that I didn't even know, thoughts in my mind that I didn't even know were driving the emotions in my life that were driving behaviors that I don't want. And so by going into that and journaling, I'm going, wait a second. Like, here's the thought behind this. How do I shift that thought, or how do I unpack that, or how do I remove that? Because these aren't emotions that are driving behaviors that I want in my life. And so I'm reflecting and evaluating. The other piece that I try to do daily is I either try to ground myself or I try to just be mindful. And there's tons and tons and tons of research, or not research, but there is research on this. But there's tons of resources on YouTube if you want like just mindfulness routine, okay? Where you can click on YouTube and it plays through this mindfulness meditation or these prompts and things like that. For me, it's not so much that. For me, it's just getting into a place where I have no distractions. Sometimes it's just me stepping outside, 4:35 a.m. when I wake up, and it's me putting my feet in the dirt. It's me putting my feet in the grass and being able to hear, like feel that, and be able to like feel the coolness or the dew, or being able to hear the birds starting to chirp that early in the morning and looking towards the east and seeing is the sun rising yet, right? I'm just grounding myself in that day and being fully present in the moment. And that helps me mentally and that helps me emotionally. And then there's a piece that I do almost every single day, whether I actually go to the physical gym or I try to work out a little bit at home, but it's that I sweat. I try to spend 45 minutes a day, no matter what, in some sort of high intensity exercise. All right. And so I do specific weight training and I have a plan and I'm doing that, right? There's 5 days a week that I'm trying to do that. But then there's days where meetings or different things within my schedule don't allow me to get there. And so I minimally do 100 push-ups and 100 squats every single day. All right. And then what I've tried to really adopt here, and I haven't done a great job, but beginning to do it better and better, is I'm trying to walk more. I'm trying to get out and actually physically walk. And I think I highlighted it a little bit on the last show, is that I'm trying to walk because that can be a release, that can be a reset, that can be just a distraction-free time too, to just let my mind go and process through things on its own and arrive back and say, all right, I'm ready to take on the next thing for the day. But I try to walk. I try to get out there, and hiking in the woods is another big thing that I enjoy and my family does as well. So minimally going back to that, like sweating, I'm trying to sweat, and that's physically developing. All right. That also can be developing our physical resiliency, our mental and emotional resiliency, because at the end of the day, there's days like today that I did not want to go to the gym. And so days like today that I don't want to go to the gym, not only do I still go, but then I remove my earbuds. Like I won't listen to music. I fight through that struggle. I intentionally put myself in that fire of I'm not going to allow the extra dopamine and the extra excitement of the motivation from music. I'm going to use this as a crucible to further develop my capability and capacity. All right. And then when you get to the other side, you're happy, you're proud, you're excited, and it further develops that self-belief, right? That spiritual aspect. And then I definitely try to fuel and recover. And so I try to monitor my inputs of what am I bringing into my body? What am I allowing into my body? What am I allowing in terms of what am I listening to? What am I watching? But also what am I eating? My water intake. I only have 2 cups or less a day of coffee because I've just noticed that when I have over 2, I become jittery and I become spacey, and it's just too much. But then again, going back to the food too, is that I monitor my food intake. That I'm specifically going, hey, these are days that when I eat this, like I feel great. When I don't eat this, I don't feel good. When I was eating 3 times a day or even 2 times a day, I would get into these fogs. But now I have 4 meals a day because I know by breaking that up, it keeps me sustained throughout the day. And then intentionally recovering. I know that I need to either take a cold plunge or I need to take a cold shower every single day. That resets a lot of my nervous system and helps me like energize me too. I need to have at least 8 hours of sleep a night. I have to. And I know that some people are like, hey, I can go 5. Do you, right? Everybody's a little bit different, but I've tried 5, I've tried 6, I've tried 10, but my time is like 7.5 to 8. And so I go to bed at a specific time and I wake up at a specific time because that's a discipline, right? And then finally, and this is something that really cultivates the mental aspect of who we are, is that I try to continuously develop in terms of gaining more knowledge and learning. And so I'm seeking things every single day and something that inspires me or is intriguing to me, and I want to lean into that and I want to learn something new about that. Today, something that I did is that it was kind of a little bit of physical and a little bit of that mental side, but I learned some things about yoga, and I actually went through a yoga prompt, like a process of 15 minutes, a routine that was challenging. That was challenging to me, and I was learning the like different things with yoga and how it helps not only with flexibility but the connection with your body and different things. And that was something that I did today. Something that I don't normally do, but it was like I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna do something different, right? Another thing that I'm doing is that I've been fascinated with Stoicism and Stoics, but there's also a philosophy within like South American cultures called Toltecs. I believe I pronounced that right, which is considered the men and women of wisdom in South America. All right, and so it's a lot of like this philosophy of Stoicism, but in the South American culture. And so I've been learning a lot about that, and I've been intrigued, and it's been challenging. And that's something that I continue to try to read every single day, 10 to 15 minutes or 20 pages of a book, or watching a YouTube video on something. I'm constantly trying to, invest and refine that mental aspect and continuing to learn and develop. All right. And so those are specific disciplines that I would challenge you to really grab a hold of, right? I gave a ton of examples with those, but essentially setting the tone for the day right away through drinking that water, gratitude. Maybe you can combine some grounding and mindfulness in that, evaluating, reflecting, right? Giving yourself, how am I doing? What am I doing? That's the immediate feedback that we desire for performance, okay? Sweat. Get out there and sweat. Get out there and do something hard, right? Do out there and challenge yourself to continue to refine your resiliency and your mental toughness, okay? Recover. Fuel your body and recover, right? And going back to, we don't have to just sleep. It can be active recovery. Some of those walking, like I talked about, can be active recovery, all right? And then continuously developing your mind. And when you do these disciplines, you're continuously cultivating the physical aspect of who you are, the mental aspect of who you are, the emotional aspect of who you are, and the spiritual aspect of who you are. And when those things are constantly being cultivated, you are developing into the best version of yourself, all right? And that's what we strive for you to do. We strive for you to do that as an individual. We strive for you to do that as a leader and creating environments where people do that. And so if you've been in a season of struggle, these are disciplines that you can immediately grab a hold of and you can immediately put into your life. And you might not experience change in the first 5 to 6 days, but I can tell you, if you continue with these disciplines, it'll create distance from where you are to where you want to go. You'll start moving further in that direction and your mood will begin to change. All right. And so if you want these disciplines, what I would ask is feel free to reach out to us on social media at Meraki Perform on all social media platforms, or you can email me at Dan, it's Dan, D-A-N, at Meraki, M-E-R-A-K-I, perform.com, and I'll send you this over in a PDF, all right? I want you to continue to recognize and step into your greatness, all right? And I want to end the show with this, is that last episode we talked about a book recommendation. And so I believe we recommended Peak Performance by Brad Studelberg and Steve Magnus, which is a great book to dive into. It kind of touches a little bit surface level of what we talked about last time of the performance cycle, but it dives into some other aspects and gives some great strategies. And what I wanted to do today is I actually brought a book, but I wanted you to and really recommend this book by Alex Hutchinson called Endure. All right. And one of the things that I've really enjoyed is being able to dive into different sports and learn from different coaches and leaders and different people in these spaces on how they have sought out and seeked peak performance. All right. I don't know if that's a word, but how they have, they've cultivated peak performance. They've strived for that. Okay. And Alex has a unique story that I don't want to get away. And it is a pretty dense read. So if you're somebody that's like, I'm not a great reader, I don't want to read, get it on Audible. That's what I did first. And then I bought the book and went back through it. But he talks about his experience as a collegiate runner and his experience, how their coach and his program brought in a mental performance coach, kind of like myself. And at that time, he was like, yeah, screw this. I'm not doing that. And then he ended up becoming a writer and ended up pursuing peak performance and how to what's the research? What's the science? What are all these things? And what a lot of our society would say, tips and tricks and hacks, right? And so he spends so much time researching this, and he talks about all the research he's done. He's talked about everything he's learned, and there's all great things in here. But the reason why I want to really recommend this is that he arrives at the end of it, and he basically says, like, if there is one thing I would recommend and one thing that I would have done differently, is I would have trained the mental side in college. I would have actually taken it seriously, because nothing else affects performance like developing that mental side. And so I wanted to recommend that book because you don't need to hear it from me. Here's a guy that not only competed at the college level, I believe he also worked with like Olympian level athletes and has informed a lot of some of that coaching and those coaches at that level. But he arrives at this position of like, I wish I would have cultivated my mindset, my mental capacities and capability more. That would have impacted my running and my college career more than anything. And so that could be a great book for you. And I'll try to link it into our description and everything like that. But I just want to end here and say thank you. I'm grateful for you guys. And I know that if you put these strategies into practice, that there will be a change. There will be a tangible change in your life. All right, in your pursuit of whatever that is. And we want to keep equipping you as the individual and helping you develop your mindset. And we want to keep equipping leaders to influence those organizations and those teams. All right. And so like this, subscribe to this, share it. Feel free to connect with us and subscribe as well to our podcast. This is the podcast. Our newsletter, excuse me. Because we would love to just keep giving you and investing in you, all right? And if there's anything we can do for you in the future, please let us know. And if there's any other topic you'd like to discuss or to dive in, we'd love to hear that. And so keep striving, keep moving, implement some of these disciplines, and start seeking out and finding that greatness within, and start taking action to pursue it, all right? Greatness is within.